They were great. Those aliens, aren't they great?
Eavesdroppin.
Ooh, Michelle. It's that time of the week again. It's eavesdropping time. What are we going to do about it?
We are going to have a chitty-chatty time. That's what we're going to do about it. I know.
I have missed that chitty-chatty time. It's only been a week.
I know. Have you missed the robe?
God, no.
You're a bitch.
It does look quite white and bright.
It is.
Have you run it through the wash?
My clothes are always impeccably clean, Geordie. Rude. Anyway, I'm back in the robe.
It has had an ultra-white wash. It looks almost purple. A bit like those turkey teeth you see on Married at First Sight.
Oh my God.
UK.
No one has teeth that white unless they are fake. That's the whole point.
Who wants fake teeth?
Well, Geordie, I think we've actually got to introduce ourselves here because these poor listeners who have just tuned into Eavesdroppin', who've never heard us before. Hello.
Hello. I'm Geordie.
And I'm Michelle.
Together we are Eavesdroppin', the podcast, and you are...
An eavesdropper.
Sorry.
No, you've come. You're here for
Congrats.
it. I know, congrats. You're here for the chat. You're here for the laughs. You're here for the knowledge.
Knowledge, facts. I had a little message from another podcast. I'm going to give them a shout out. They're called The Midlifers.
The Midlifers, okay.
And they are Australian.
Hi.
And they liked one of our things on Instagram. Doors plus steps equals doorsteps. Facts is what they wrote on our story. And I wrote back saying, probably the only true fact spoken on our pod. And they wrote back saying, nah, I've heard your true crime. Those facts were... And there's 5 grimace faces.
Oh, I mean, I wonder if they clicked through to the Tanya Furlan episode.
It was the Tanya Furlan episode, yes.
That was the door plus a step, doorstep murders, Jill Dando. Go back if you don't know what we're talking about. A couple of weeks back, we had a true crime time. That's what we had.
We did. People who listen to us on the regular know that we do cover stories that are true crime. We do cover stories that are real life. And we also cover stories that are supernatural. Today, it's going to be one of those supernatural days. Do you like the way I said supernatural?
I was thinking you were being very Stephen Toast right now. I love it. Supernatural.
Super. My husband wondered if it was okay to bring the word super back into conversation, like somebody says something and you say, super. And I said to him, babe, you've been doing that for years. He didn't know.
He's been ahead of himself. Do you know what they say here in Europe? They say, tip-top.
TikTok.
Tip-top. What do they say? When something's bad, they say, of course, tip-top. They also say, if it's bad, catastrophe.
Catastrophe.
Yes.
I like that one. I sometimes say that to myself. I would never say it out loud because it feels a bit embarrassing.
Yes.
But I would definitely say that to myself quite often.
Okay.
Catastrophe.
Catastrophe. And, you know, if they're going to have a little get-together, they say, let's make a party.
Oh, they'll make party.
They're going to make party.
I know some Germans who love to make party.
I love it. I love the language disconnect and the way their other languages translate into English.
Well, last week you said something funny on the podcast. It was the episode about...
I said something funny.
It was the...
What a change. One thing.
Only the one thing. No, you said something that they say in Switzerland. I was confused because you'd gotten Cadogan wrong. Do you remember? And I corrected you. But then you said patent. That was it. The posh way. The Swiss way.
A patent.
Who knew?
Because I have to say it about 10 times a week. Patent.
Why?
And JS has a patent.
Or a patent.
Well, it's not actually a patent. It's called something else.
It's a business.
You have to have a patent to own a business.
Right.
You have to study for it. Like, it's a whole thing.
Oh.
So when I read it, now my brain is patent. But obviously it's
Fair
a
enough.
patent or a patent.
Yes, in that
You
story
say
it
cadogan,
was, yes.
I say cadogan, you say potato.
No, you say Cadogan. And Southwark.
I've never said Southwark.
No one says that. Everybody knows it's Southwark. Karen, who has the doggy Baxter, we are on the same WhatsApp group. She's a listener.
Hi, Cass.
She's the one who recognised you at the train station, shouted out the window, "You're on Eavesdroppin'."
And I was like, fans everywhere.
Somebody noticed me. I had some complaints that I wanted to ask her off WhatsApp about the dog walkers group. They started talking about foxes. Do you remember? I've spoken about this WhatsApp group before because I asked for assistance finding my guinea pig, and it all kicked off about animal cruelty, and it
You're
caused...
a bad parent.
I'm a bad guinea pig parent. They threatened that my guinea pig would die. Somebody said I would help, but my hip has collapsed. Well, those same people are back at it on the WhatsApp talking about foxes. Oh, my God. People with too much time on their hands arguing about whether they should be culled and that they've eaten all the hedgehogs in the area. That's why you don't see hedgehogs anymore, that we shouldn't put poisoned food out for them, which I also agree with. You shouldn't do that. Some people say you should. Other animals will eat that. Oh, it's just awful. Yada, yada, yada. One person actually joined the group midway just to threaten to leave because they said, you lot sicken me, go and support the fox plague, but do it without me having to read about it. I mean, that sentence in itself, it's so contradictory. You've joined a group to slag something off and to say, I don't want to read this shit. So leave the group. Now, I would leave the group, but I need to know if something's gone wrong down at the place where I walk. I need to know. If I've lost my dog, they have been so helpful. It was just nonstop, Michelle. And it made me think about comment sections. You know, there are too many voices out there now. These should just be passing thoughts, but instead they're committed to black and white, forced opinions and division. Enough already.
I know. Reddit,
Quora, Instagram even.
Everything. Everyone loves to make a comment because they think people care and that their comment is important. Well, do you know what?
Just have a thought. Just let it pass by.
And live and let live.
Live and let live.
You don't have to have a comment on everything, says the girl who has a podcast. I get it. I get it. And certainly you will hear I am full of opinions all the time.
But we love your opinions, Michelle. We love to hear you opinionate.
The good thing is, if you want to hear my opinion, you have to come to Eavesdroppin or Show Dumpin', which is our Maths UK Season 9 tea on all the shit that's going on. It is a drama. We're there for the drams. It's a chicken bucket full of drama, that show.
A chicken bucket? Oh, that sounds disgusting.
I've been saying that on the bloody show notes, Geordie. Have you not been reading?
I haven't heard. On the notes, yes, of course. No, I haven't read that.
Last week, it was a scrunchie full of drama because Polly had that bloody scrunchie.
You hate that scrunchie.
If you don't know what we're talking about, go to Show Dumpin' Maths UK for all the goss.
Yes, we're almost at the end because the TV show has actually finished, which means we will finish. Yes. It's not going to be a weekly podcast. No. Anytime a TV show grabs our fancy, we will do a little companion when we've got the time.
Yes.
And aren't you guys lucky that we gave it to you for free? Because some of you are patrons, and we want to say thank you to those patrons for paying to be our patron.
Yes.
They pay a little bit of money over at patreon.com/eavesdroppin.
Yes, they do. And we love you. We love everyone, but we love our patrons even more. Thank you.
We try to give you a free monthly episode that you don't hear anywhere else. And we are still, I know I keep talking about it, but I think we're going to have some merch soon, Michelle.
Oh, look,
you and I need a meeting.
I've been hot on the Canva trying to design a key ring for us. So you never
I think
know.
It should be a tote bag. I like a tote.
Who doesn't love a tote?
I love a tote.
It gives me library bag vibes.
I love the library bag, but I'm wearing that instead of a designer handbag these days. I don't care what people think. Rocket.
When have we ever cared?
Sometimes I care.
The hate we get on YouTube. They fucking hate us.
I don't even look at that.
I do. I don't care. I get the comments in my inbox.
Back to comments. I just wanted to say, aside from the WhatsApp group, it's a hello to Karen and Baxter from us here at Eavesdroppin', because I know you're listening. I know when you listen, it's every Wednesday.
Hi, Kaz and Baz.
Baz!
Kaz and Baz. That's what we got.
I think Baxter will absolutely take offence to being called Baz.
He's just got to get Australianised. Get with it, Bazzo.
Bazzo.
Baxo, probably.
Baxo. He won't come when you call him, if that's the name you use.
Baxo.
Baxo. No, it doesn't work. What do you think?
I'm not sure about that. Well, Geordie, I did have a comment from an eavesdropper. I was talking to eavesdropper Steph, a.k.a. my sister. Well, obviously we were talking about Celine Dion because she's such a fan.
She's obsessed.
No, she fucking hates me for stitching her up. Eavesdropper Steph actually cannot stand Celine Dion's music. She just thought that documentary had a little bit of emotional pull, but no.
Can I pause you just there? I saw on Instagram, because I do scroll, Adele in concert in Las Vegas, and she noticed Celine Dion in the audience and she stopped. She cried. She hugged her. The pair had a great big hug. Adele couldn't continue to sing. She wandered off and then she said, let's have a hand for Celine Dion. She's my inspiration.
Aww.
And she stood up like the Queen. And it was very emotional. They were both very moved. I thought it was nice.
Well, I do like Adele. I think she's got a bit something real about her.
Earthy.
And she's earthy and she's rough as guts, rough as pig's balls.
What?
And
I don't know about that.
good on her. I'll have to look that up. Maybe I'll pop that on the Patreon.
Do it. So what did Steph say? What was her comment?
She said to me, oh my God, I've been watching a documentary. I'm only one episode in, but I think you should watch it.
Yeah.
So I did, Geordie.
What is it?
I fucking watched it. You know how we always talk about things where like, there's a Netflix series. Didn't watch it.
Yeah.
Well,
You actually watched.
I watched the Manhattan Alien Abduction.
Oh.
So look, if you haven't watched it yet and you don't want spoilers,
Look away.
you're in the wrong place. Exactly. Skip ahead to Geordie's story, or just turn off and come back next week. But
Don't do that.
because you've been missing out on everything. But look, if you do want to come on this crazy ride with me, stay listening because, Geordie, we're going back to 1989.
Oh, nice.
Yes, it's the 80s.
I'm rocking out to an invisible song right now. I don't know what the song's going to be. I guess it's going to be something like Prince. I'm thinking Nirvana. I'm thinking The Cure. Friday I'm in Love. No?
Absolutely not.
I love that new Cure album, by the way.
I thought I'm going to go check out the number ones on the Billboard charts in November 1989 in the US of A. They're fucked.
Oh,
okay.
Christ.
I was so disappointed. But look, it is the tail end of the 80s, so it was never going to be great, I guess. Number one, it's Blame It on the Rain, Milli Vanilli. What the fuck is that song? I don't even know that. Number two, When I See You Smile by Bad English.
Don't know that either.
What the hell? I'm gutted. I wanted this to be, like you said,
Classics.
all the classics. But number three, it is a classic. Guess what it is? You won't guess.
Cream, Get on Top. No?
No, it is actually something that our Patreon listeners will know that we have done in the past. There's video evidence of this on the Patreon.
It'll be Running Up That Hill by Kate Bush.
No, it's Love Shack.
Baby Love Shack. Oh, that's a great song.
It's a great tune. And I was like, thank fuck at least something decent is
Yes.
in there. Number four, The Way That You Love Me by
No.
Paula Abdul.
No.
And then number five, you know this one because we've talked about it on the pod before. We didn't start the fire.
And the world is turning. Viva, va, va, va.
That's it. I was so disappointed when I went through this because I was like, 80s, it's going to be good. No, it sucked.
Never mind.
Disappointment. What I will do, though, is I'm going to get back to the story, Geordie.
Fabulous.
And I'm going to tell you
That's what we're here for.
what's going on. You're here for it. In the early AM, early wee hours, on the night of November 30, 1989, Linda Napolitano, who, when all this came out initially, back in the late 80s, was using a pseudonym called Linda Cortiel. So Linda says that 3 grey aliens...
Great.
Grey. The greys. The
I
greys. Greys.
They were great. Those aliens, aren't they great?
They were just great.
You're having a great time, aliens? Yeah, because we're great.
They're great and they're grey. So 3 grey aliens
Yeah.
levitated her out of the window of her 12th floor window in her apartment block in Manhattan. So they levitated her into a beam of light that took her onto a spacecraft that then sped off over the Brooklyn Bridge.
And this is on Netflix right now. I have to watch.
It's on Netflix. So, I mean, you won't need to because I'm going to talk you through the whole fucking documentary.
Fabulous.
Anyway, so the documentary starts with Linda, but also a woman called Carol Rainey. They're both old now. They're in their 70s. Time has not been kind to poor old Carol. R.I.P. She's no longer with us.
I think that's a natural progression of time.
This documentary just came out in October, and from the time of shooting to the time it came out, poor old Carol passed away.
Oh, I see.
But yes, Carol, time was not kind. Whereas Linda, I mean, she looks all right. You know, she's 77 now. She looks not bad. But anyway, they're both old now. They're in their 70s. But their memories of what went down in the late 80s still haunts them to this day. I say to this day, till Carol's last day. And look, I'm just going to put it out there. Carol thinks the whole thing is a hoax. But Linda maintains that aliens abducted her and experimented on her.
Hang on. Is Linda and Carol, are they related? Are they friends? Are they lovers? What's going on here? Where did Carol suddenly come from?
This is the thing. It's a weird triangle. I'm going to get to that because it's all intertwined. Linda also says the aliens were tracking her. And honestly, this series gets heated between these two ladies. It gets heated between these two ladies, particularly because, like you have asked just now, there's a third person here, a ufologist called Bud Hopkins.
Bud. Oh, Bud.
Bud Hopkins, B-U-D-D.
Yes.
And Geordie, I feel like we've talked about him before on this podcast.
He does sound familiar, doesn't he? When you said B-U-D-D.
Yes. Don't ask me when. Bud Hopkins. He's a ufologist. He's also an author. So he's kind of up there with the whole Whitley Strieber kind of gang.
And we did do a whole episode on Whitley Strieber, didn't we?
Yes, we did. At the time, Bud was looking at claims from various people all over America who told him that they had been taken by aliens and experimented on. If you're wondering how the fuck does Carol fit into all this, because obviously Linda got beamed up. Carol was his wife.
Whose wife?
Bud's wife.
Okay, Carol is Bud's wife. Gotcha.
Yes. She's also a filmmaker and a documentarian and a skeptic. So that's how these three main characters in this story are intertwined.
Okay.
Bud wasn't only interested in talking to people who thought they'd been abducted by aliens. His thing was that he would meet with them and then he would use hypnosis to get to the bottom of their alien abduction using recovered memories.
Oh.
What do you think of that?
I think this is fascinating. I'd love to know what the outcome was. Was he heading down a kind of psychodynamic route, trying to find out if something had happened to them in their childhood that they had repressed?
I find your response very interesting, Geordie, because I thought you were going to say, what the actual fuck? This reminds me of the satanic cults where there were implanted memories and this and that.
Well, I do worry about implanted memories, absolutely. If he's a ufologist, I just call him, I think that's what it is, ufologist, and he is trying to get more information to support his claims that people are being abducted, then he could easily implant memories, and that's no good. But if he's a psychologist...
Well, I don't think he is. I just think he's a guy who's interested in aliens.
But his wife's a skeptic.
She is, because she did not believe in all of the hypnosis that he was doing because, and this comes out later in the documentary, she reckons he was actually leading them. And she was upset that he was putting these people under hypnosis and they were quite vulnerable.
And implanting memories.
Well, not implanting, but maybe leading, asking questions.
Yeah.
And in a way, implanting.
Oh, God. Okay, did they stay married?
I don't think so. It all blew up, but I'll get to that further down the line. She initially was like, I think this is fucking hokey. So she asked him to regress her.
Okay.
But what happened to her was enough to make her believe that kind of what he was doing was legit in the beginning, because he regressed her and she remembered like seriously traumatic memories from her childhood that she had buried about growing up in a strict fundamentalist family. At that point, she was like, okay, maybe there's something to this. And she does become supportive of his work. And he keeps talking to abductees and he keeps hearing the same things over and over. People are telling him they get abducted by aliens. The aliens put long needles up their nose.
Fuck that.
And implant something there.
No thanks.
I know. And look, when Bud is talking about this, he puts all of this implantation by aliens into humans into perspective by talking about what we as humans do to animals.
Right.
Because Bud also RIP, is no longer with us.
Yeah.
Bud believed that aliens were trying to track humans. And it was the same way that we track wildlife.
Yeah.
We tag, we track, and then we return to find the animal.
So it's like an anthropological experiment.
And this is what Bud believed aliens were doing to humans. And he wanted the human race to be aware that this was happening because in his mind, it makes absolute sense that people have more than one alien abduction. It's not a one and done. You're being tracked. So, of course, they're coming back because they're monitoring you. So that was his perspective on all this, which I think is actually quite interesting. I'd never thought of it like that. And then, of course, Linda happened.
That sounds like a song. Linda happened.
Linda is starting to happen. That's a Lemonhead song, which I sang very badly. In 1989, Linda was actually quite an attractive 41-year-old Italian-American. She was a wife and a mother. She just had a relatively ordinary life in New York. One day, she reads a book that Bud has written because he's written quite a few books about aliens. And for her, everything just clicked. Like I said, these alien abductions and alien contact with humans, it happens more than once, and she says it happened more than once to her.
Oh, right.
So she sat down, wrote Bud a letter telling him about the time, and this is all before the Manhattan Alien Abduction. She read this letter, contacted Bud, told him about something that happened 10 years earlier when she was in the Catskills. She had a dream. She felt like she was levitating, and then the following morning, she woke up lying on the grass and she had a very bad nosebleed with blood streaming out of one nostril, the right nostril.
Oh, no.
I have to say, where the fuck was her husband at this point? She told this to Bud and he was like, oh my God, Linda, come over. And this is what...
It's quite camp then.
This is what he does the whole documentary because I'm telling you, he records everything.
Oh.
It's almost like those cult leaders.
Keith Raniere, who recorded every minute of every conversation he had.
But he wasn't the only one. There were quite a few who recorded everything. And he recorded everything. So you have a lot of that on this documentary. Anyway, he's always like, oh my God, Linda, come right over. When he met her, he was very taken with Linda, according to Carol.
Yeah.
And look, she was attractive. And she was a little bit kind of coquettish. You know, she was charismatic and she made an absolutely fantastic advocate for what Bud was trying to do.
The sexy side of alien abduction.
Exactly. But Carol was not sure about any of this.
I'm sure.
Because Carol says Linda was too good in front of the camera. Linda was also really concerned with how she looked. This also comes down to, she had told Bud, one day, Linda looked in the mirror and she was like, oh my God, I've got a crooked nose and a lump. When the hell did that happen? You know, she was like, that never was there before. And she freaked out actually because she thought, is this a tumor? So she told her husband about it and he was like, you need to go get your nose x-rayed. So she did. And the doctor says to her, well, yeah, you've had nose surgery. And she's like, no, I didn't.
No, I didn't.
And he's like, you have a scar. And she's like, maybe I scratched it. And he's like, no. This was made with a scalpel.
Oh, yikes.
That scared the shit out of her. And this was all before November 30, 1989, when she got beamed up.
God.
So Linda gets an x-ray, looks at the x-ray, and inside her nose, and you see this x-ray on the documentary, there's a weird coil.
Huh?
Now, you know the branding for the new Instagram threads, and it's like a weird kind of...
I know what you mean.
It looks like that inside her nose.
Wow.
She shows Bud this x-ray, and he is fucking creaming himself, and he calls it...
Yuck, Bud.
Yuck, Bud. He calls it the radiological smoking gun.
Yes.
That proves alien abduction is real.
Well, I've got to say right now I'm feeling pretty... Ooh, this is intriguing.
And then November 30, 1989 happened. And Linda calls Bud to tell him. And like I said, she's always calling Bud. He's taping everything. Yeah. Again, he's like, oh my God, Linda, you must come over immediately.
So camp,
and she's
Bud.
like, okay, just let me refresh my makeup. I'll be over.
Because you know she's going to be on camera.
I think so. And look, she has got this guy wrapped around her finger. So anyway, she goes to see Bud. He does hypnosis regression on her, and she explains the whole abduction, what they did to her, what she saw. Bud is loving it. And apparently there are 23 witnesses, Geordie, who saw Linda float out of her window and into the alien spaceship.
Who are they?
It sounds pretty convincing. Hold your horses. Pin that question.
Crikey.
Because, Geordie, there is more to this story. So, obviously, Bud is all over this new alien abduction, and he called Linda's case the most important UFO abduction case in history. And Bud and Linda are becoming tight. You know, he was regressing her all the time. Linda was finding out more and more. Bud was telling people all about Linda's case. I mean, she was on fucking Oprah, you know.
Oh.
This went big. And then she says her life started to get weird. And she started to get a bit paranoid, not just about aliens, but also about the government. And she felt her phone was bugged. Bud believed that the FBI was interested in Linda's case. And then she gets visited by the men in black. So, two guys called Richard and Dan, they both claim that they saw her get beamed up and they tracked her down. But when Bud tried to actually track down, you know, Richard and Dan, he could not find them. Then a letter arrives to Linda from Richard and Dan, these men in black. They tell her they are not police, but federal agents. And they were acting as protection and security guards for the Secretary General of the UN on the night she got beamed up, which is when they saw her. They were in the car with a guy called Perez de Coya. He was in the car with them, with Richard and Dan.
Yeah.
And all of them, including apparently the Secretary General of the UN, all saw Linda being beamed up.
No way.
He's come out to say no.
Oh.
But
so no way. That didn't happen.
So he says no, but can you really trust him? Because he doesn't want to look like a crank. Who knows? So now Linda's case is getting political. And then, Geordie, it takes another turn because the aliens come back to her apartment and they are now fucking with her family.
What?
Because early that summer, Linda's family all went to bed late one night and she felt something weird down her throat and she started to choke. And then the whole family, so her husband, her and two sons, they were all in the living room with nosebleeds.
Oh, God.
And Linda was like, I knew the aliens had come back. And this time, you know, obviously they're messing with her family.
Yeah.
They were all bleeding from their right nostrils only. This is what the husband says too. And then her son, Johnny, who's 9, is on camera. And he's kind of smart and a little bit sassy. And, you know, Bud is like, Linda, I need to hypnotize you. So he does. She sees Johnny when she's under this hypnosis. And he's like, you know, Mum, they're here. There's 3 of them. Johnny is begging her to not let them take him.
Yeah.
She's paralyzed. She can't help him. And she says she's absolutely devastated because she knows he must have felt betrayed.
Oh.
Bud's crying. Linda's crying. He's totally invested
That's
in Linda.
heartbreaking if it's true. I mean, I don't know if it's true, but I mean, just that story in itself is horrifying.
And then Carol steps in because she's seeing Linda being hypnotized because, you know, it's happening at the house. And at this point, Carol has seen loads of Bud's hypnosis sessions.
Yeah.
Geordie, she smells a rat.
Okay.
She says when people go under, they kind of sound drunk when they're, you know, under hypnosis.
Because you've seen so many times these people have gone under.
Yep. And they all slurring their words. Like, not Linda.
All right.
Not Linda. She's
prattling it off.
Prattling it all off. And this is why, you know, Carol's like, she's pranking us all.
Right.
And then she starts thinking about Johnny. Was Linda coaching Johnny? Because there are recordings, you hear them on the documentary, of Johnny's account, and there were weird pauses in the recording.
Oh, okay.
So Carol's wondering, did Linda convince her son he'd been abducted? And that's the moment Carol becomes hell-bent on proving it was a hoax.
Hoax.
Sorry, a hoax. Did I say hoax?
Yeah.
Oh, fucking hell. I'm so hooked by it all. I don't know what I believe in all of this.
Yeah.
But then look, Netflix decide to go in search of Johnny.
As an adult. Okay, how old is he now? In his 40s, 50s?
30s. He's in his
Can't do maths.
30s.
Okay.
No, he must be in his 40s.
So did he talk?
Well, Linda's like, he's never going to agree to talk. And then he does. He talks. He's yapping. And he was like, it was the most terrifying and hopeless thing he's ever felt.
Oh.
He says, I was reluctant to even start talking about it again. It's been over 30 years,
Wow.
he says. I've only talked to my therapist about it. And he's in silhouette here, I will say. So I'm like, is it really
him?
Johnny?
Yeah.
Never see the face, but who knows? Now, Johnny talks about his experience and he's like, I was young. Why did they pick me? And this is a quote. He says, you pray it's a nightmare, but it was a real experience. Mum was in the kitchen. I looked out the window and turned around. There were 3 beings in the living room. He then goes on to talk about it was the most vivid memory that he has, which is calling out to his mum for help, but she was paralyzed and he is screaming. And he's like, are they going to come back for me? And he was terrified. Now we've got her kid involved, but Geordie, there's more.
Oh.
Because Linda now tells Bud that she thinks her ovaries were taken by aliens.
Oh, God.
And that they want to do like breeding experiments with humans. And Bud, again, is fucking creaming himself. So he regresses her and she's like, I'm in a strange place. And she remembers what happened to her in the spaceship. An alien picks up a long stick and is examining Linda's stomach. And she says they used a needle the length of a turkey baster.
Oh.
Her words. And look, this is all happening over a period of years.
Yeah.
And Linda is now famous. She's on all the talk shows. And in November 1995, 6 years after, Linda goes on Ricky Lake's show. After she is on the Ricky Lake show, things start to get dark with the men in black. Dan and Richard start harassing her to the point where she is paranoid. She gets a gun.
Oh.
And Bud tells her to wear a wire. So what do you know, Geordie? After she's got this wire on,
Yeah.
she gets abducted
Oh.
by Dan and Richard.
Who's Dan and Richard?
They're the men in black.
Okay.
And she has a recording of it and we hear it. So she's like...
Have we been introduced to Dan and Richard in the story previous to this?
About 10 times. Are you listening to me?
Yeah, I am, but I don't remember hearing their names.
So I talked about the men in black who were the security detail for the UN secretary.
Oh, that's when
Perez
we talked about them. Yeah, the 23. Yeah.
Okay. There's a lot here. I do understand. She talks about how, and you hear all of this on the documentary. She's like, I was walking up Cherry Street and then she sees a black car. And then she sees Richard and Dan. And then you hear her getting abducted.
Wow.
They tell her, like, take your shoes off. They want to see her feet. And then Dan says, come here, half-breed. Like, it's really scary. He thought that Linda was half human, half alien. So she gets out a gun and she says, you watch out or I'll shoot your balls off. And she manages...
Go, Linda, you feisty bitch.
She is a feisty bitch. And she gets out of the car somehow. And when Bud hears this, he's like, oh my God, Linda, come over.
Camp. My God, Bud.
I know. At this point, Carol's had enough. She's like...
watching this soap opera play out.
This is all made up. I know. And she just thinks her husband's being manipulated by Linda. So Carol decides... fuck this, I'm going to blow this up and prove it's a hoax. She tracks down all the so-called witnesses to this Manhattan abduction when Carol was floating out the window.
The 23 people.
None of them can be verified.
Ah.
A lot of them didn't see, actually, Linda at all. They just saw a beam of light and then heard something. So it's all a bit...
it's a bit shaky. Yeah.
And then look, Bud writes a book about the Manhattan Alien Abduction.
Yeah.
It's a bestseller, Geordie.
Of course.
They want to make a movie, but it all goes tits up when Carol decides to go against her husband and tell the press that she thinks Linda is hoaxing everyone. And obviously, this is bad. It's bad for Bud. It's bad for Carol's marriage. It's bad for Linda, because if Linda is hoaxing everyone, Carol's just pulled the plug on the cash cow because, no movie deal ever happened. Book sales plummeted. So going back to adult Johnny, the son, he's on camera saying, Linda's a great mom, but then he talks about a nightmare he had when he was 6. He told his mom about it, and she was shocked because she was like, Johnny, I had these same experiences.
What?
And he felt absolute terror in that moment because his mum told him
his nightmare's real.
Yeah. And he says that fucked him up for life.
Yeah.
And he has been in therapy for a long time and that it's done damage. Did Linda make it all up and then convince her son he'd been abducted too? Carol definitely thinks this and that Linda's deceiving everyone. Bud thinks Linda's telling the truth because he says, how could she have created this hoax with 1,000 different parts? But then Carol gets hold of some of the letters that Linda gave Bud from the Men in Black, Richard and Dan.
Yeah.
And she takes the letters to a handwriting expert. And guess what?
What?
It's Linda's handwriting.
Oh, Linda.
According to the expert. But Bud won't believe it.
Okay.
And then Linda's like, well, who put the thing in my nose? But when Bud asked her to have the alien implant removed as evidence, mysteriously it had vanished.
Oh, so what's this x-ray, though, with the curl in it, the coil, the Threads logo?
It was in there. Now it's not. No one knows how it got in there. No one knows how it came out.
Medical experts can verify this.
Well, there's doubt over that too.
Oh, okay.
So there's question marks all through this thing. And then Carol just thinks, Linda's total attention-seeking hoaxer. Linda hates Carol. The son is fucked up. Bud died 14 years ago, believing Linda's story.
There's no winners in this story, is there?
No, there's not. And honestly, throughout the whole time watching this documentary, I kept thinking, are we going to get to the part where he divorces Carol for Linda? Because these two got to be shagging.
Yeah, it seems like that. Linda, come on over. Come on. I'm excitable.
I know.
That's your impression of Bud. I'd love to see the film so I can see what he's really like.
Well, it is like that. It's all like, oh my God, Linda, come on over. And she's like, I'm coming. Just let me do my makeup.
Let me put my rouge on.
And put on a super tight jumper.
Oh, Linda.
Look, I do believe something happened to her. She believes it too. But look, she's also a wannabe singer and actress.
Okay.
To wrap this up, Linda is 77. And every time you see her on this documentary, it's unflattering lighting. They put her in a prison outfit.
Oh, God.
She's smoking like fucking Lizzie Birdsworth from Cell Block H, Prisoner. I know, she's sucking on the ciggy throughout the whole documentary. And Linda actually tried to block the Netflix series from being released.
Sure.
Because she thought they were doing a documentary on her story.
Yeah.
But it's actually
an expose.
Yeah, it's an examination not of Linda's story so much, but of whether or not she was hoaxing people.
Telling the truth. Yeah.
So, and she says she would never have participated if she'd realised the angle. She was also pissed off that Carol got so much airtime, and she was pissed off that they made her wear bad clothes and, quote, made her look haggard. So, look, I want to be convinced, I do, but sorry, Linda, I just don't buy it. Even though I think in some ways she's quite convincing, I'm calling bullshit. Soz.
Yeah. I was going to ask you that. Did you think it was bullshit? And yeah, you do.
I do.
What happened last night? Was it a visit from an alien? There was an evil probe. Did he take me away in his super ship? What an alien! What an alien!
Thank you for that, Michelle.
My pleasure.
That was insane. I really want to see this now. I just want to see it to see if Bud Hopkins really is that camp.
It's 3 episodes and they're under an hour. You can
Easy.
whiz through that in a night.
Absolutely. That's the weekend sorted. Thanks. Speaking of alien abductions, it's very hard to find out there on the internet and the dark web new ones because you and I are all over this shit.
We are.
We've been going for coming up to 4 years this November, this month. We are 4 years old, the podcast.
Goodness. Happy birthday, darling.
Happy birthday, darling, to you. Yeah, so we've got a lot of stories about alien abductions and it's hard to find new ones. So I had a little root through to see about any celebrities that we may have missed the first, second, third and fourth time round.
Okay. I'm all ears.
So for you today, Michelle, I've got a story entitled Celebs and Aliens.
Love it.
And I'm going to start with Tom DeLong, who has been on my notes, in my research notes for years now, since we started this podcast. He's the guitarist from Blink-182, a band I don't know anything about, apart from the fact that Travis Barker is the drummer and he's got a tattooed face and he dates one of the Kardashians. He's also in the band with a guy called Mark Hoppus, and he and Tom were good friends and they started the band as teenagers. But Tom has always been fascinated with aliens and UFOs. In fact, in 2014, he created an entertainment company called To the Stars. And then a year later, 2015, he left the band. Then in 2017, he launched something called TTSAAS, Tits and Ass. That's what I think of when I look at those letters. And it means To the Stars Academy of Arts and Sciences.
Do you know what? I've only got one thing to say about all of this, and it's directly to you, Geordie.
What's that?
Love you to the stars and back.
To the stars and back, innit?
Love you to the stars.
That's
and
a little hint to our maths episode over on Show Dumpin'. Listen.
You got to listen.
But anyway, this Tits and Asses Academy to the Stars and Arts or whatever recruited experts in the UFO field to support his work investigating alien life. He had scientists, aerospace engineers, and creative thinkers alike all on board. He, Tom DeLong, had studied aliens for over 25 years and also employed in the Tits and Asses Academy Luis Elizondo, who used to be the director at Advanced Aerospace Threat Identification Program, and a guy called Chris Mellon, who served in defense under Bill Clinton and George W. Bush. And he also had Dr. Hal Puthoff, a physicist known for his research into psychic abilities.
Puthoff.
Puthoff or Puthoff. I don't know how to pronounce it. Puthoff.
Poo off.
Puthoff. Puthoff?
Poot off.
Who knows? So these guys all made headlines, Tits and Asses, by releasing declassified videos showing UFOs, which the military confirmed as authentic in 2019. And we have been all over that shit.
Yes, we have.
Yeah. Tits and Asses Academy, they partnered up with the US Army to study potential alien materials, such as a piece of wreckage from a 1940s incident, which is under a defense contract. And DeLong says To the Stars Academy was very involved in helping create language within the Defense Authorization Act, which is the whistleblower language, by meeting with congressmen, senators, getting them all to understand what they need to do to get this information handled in the correct way. So basically that led to the whistleblower inquiry that we talked about at length from last year.
The declassified, yes.
So according to Tom DeLong, he said, my team has really been a connector for many of those people to come forward. Many of my team's members have been testifying to the task force. So he's very up in all that, testifying and whatnot.
Well, he's got nothing else to do because he left the band.
Exactly. But if you'd like to know more about Tom DeLong and his Tits and Asses Academy and his whole alien story, you can go to the History Channel for 2 seasons of Unidentified, Inside America's UFO Investigation, which happened in 2019 and 2020. And also To the Stars, his academy has published 2 books called Secret Machine, Secret with a K, co-authored by Tom DeLong. And also he had a directorial debut called Monsters of California that came out in 2023 about 3 skateboarders that all get riled up and tied up in the paranormal with the government.
Is that fiction or fact?
I think it's fiction. He goes on to say, though, that he doesn't know what proving alien life existing would do to people in their minds. Would it be good or would it be too scary? But he thinks that these beings don't want to be seen. And that's why he feels very strongly that people should know something. And he said that his band, who used to give him shit about how often he'd talk about aliens, now support him.
Well, yeah, I mean, the government did come out and give credibility to all of this stuff.
He's been validated, absolutely. He said that Mark used to roll his eyes and walk out of the room and say things like, oh my God, get me out of here. But then once everything started with the committee, then Travis was the first one that actually had some interest and he would listen a bit more. And he says they're all supportive now and they go on stage every night and say, Tom was right. And I go, I was right.
That's not much. I was right. No one likes
a know-it-all.
A know-it-all.
For DeLong in his 20 plus years of alien research, it all came about though, Michelle, after a trip that he had as a teenager to Nevada's Area 51, when he awoke at 3 a.m. to voices and was paralyzed. And he said he said, my whole body felt like it had static electricity, and I opened my eyes and the campfire is still going, and there's a conversation going on outside the tent. It sounded like there were 20 people there talking, and instantly my mind goes, okay, they're at the campsite. They're not here to hurt us. They're talking about shit, but I can't make out what they're saying, but they're working on something. Then I close my eyes and wake up and the fire is out and I have lost about 3 hours of time, aka you fell asleep, mate. I reckon.
Yeah.
He also believes that his interest and celebrity standing means he's a target for authorities. And like you said about
Linda
being tapped, he said, I have sources from the government. I've had my phone tapped. And he says someone was doing research within the Tits and Asses Academy and they were being woken up in the middle of the night with clicking and buzzing noises and falling on the ground, vomiting every morning at 4 a.m. And he knows that those are things that happen from mind control experiments where the same technology that we use to find oil underground is used to zap somebody in the same frequency that the brain operates on, and it can cause some really horrific things to happen. Oof. I've paraphrased him there.
Okay.
He then goes on to say, if anyone tells you there's no life in the universe, you should be turned off. That's such a dumb thing to say. He's also quite camp, in my mind.
I think so too. Oh my God.
Oh my God. But I went on to look for more celebrities who had alien encounters, and you'll find that Goldie Hawn is one.
No. I love her. Well,
I know. Isn't she great?
I loved her when she was
Private Benjamin.
Young Private Benjamin. Yeah, she was great.
In the mid-1960s, though, Goldie Hawn was a dancer working in Anaheim in California. She's about 20. And around that time, there was a lot of UFO sightings. And she remembers, and she says, I remember this so clearly. I went outside my door and I sat on the little ledge and I looked up at the dark sky and I saw all these stars. And all I could think of was, how far does this go? How little are we? Are we the only planet in the whole wide universe that has life on it? And then she stared into the sky and asked, I know you're out there. I know we're not alone. And I would like to meet you one day. Now, when you were talking to me earlier about Bud Hopkins, thinking we're all being tracked and that aliens are watching us and coming and visiting more and more and more, quite often in our stories that we tell, people who have alien experiences ask for it.
Yes, they also don't. Like, there are some who are like,
sometimes they don't, but a lot of the time, all it takes is to ask.
An invitation.
And it comes. Yeah. So this is what happened to Goldie. Months later, she's working in another place dancing. And after rehearsal, she was a bit knackered and she asked a friend if she could lie down in his car for a nap. After she got into the car, she said she heard a high-pitched sound in her ear, high frequency, which woke her up. She looked out of the window and saw 2 or 3 triangular-shaped heads, silver in colour, slash for a mouth, tiny little nose, no ears, pointing at her in the car as if they were discussing her like a subject, and they were droning. This is what Goldie had said to a radio station. She said that she was paralysed and thought, oh God, I want to get up, but she didn't know if this was real or not, and eventually she shook herself out of it and ran in and told everybody what had happened. Like, I made contact with outer space. She felt like she'd burst out of a force field. And years later, she had a conversation with an astrophysicist from the University of Illinois, Urbana-Champaign, who'd been studying alien encounters. And as she was telling him about her experience, it all came back in vivid detail. She described how they touched her face and felt like she was being touched by God. And it was a loving and benevolent sensation. And it felt powerful and infused with light. But she's not the only member of her family to have experienced this, because her partner, Kurt Russell, and her son, Oliver Hudson, in 2018, they went for a flight in Russell's own plane, like light aircraft.
Okay.
He said as they approached Phoenix, specifically Sky Harbor International Airport, Kurt says, we saw a formation of lights, 6 lights arranged in a triangle shape directly over the airport.
This I believe.
He said, as I'm looking at them, I'm coming in. And I called up to the tower and they said, we're not showing anything. I said, well, there are 6 lights in a row. And they said, do you want to report this? And I said, look, I can't identify it. It's flying and it's 6 objects. So we landed, I dropped him off, meaning Oliver, and I flew home. Years later, Goldie and Kurt are watching TV, a TV show about UFOs, and Kurt says, the most reported one of all time was this one in Phoenix. And I said, wait a minute, that's the night Ollie and I were landing. He still had his logbook, and he noticed that his flight was logged, and there was nothing written in it about the UFOs in the log. But on the show, they talked about 20,000 people reporting the 6 lights, and only one of them was a general aviation pilot. And he goes, that's me.
Wow. When 23 people see you levitating out of your window and 20,000 report lights in the sky, come on. You know who you're going to believe. Let's face it, Linda's in Manhattan and only 23 saw it.
Good point, Michelle.
I give legs. I give legs to Kurt's story.
Legs.
Well done.
Kurt, you've got legs.
You got legs.
There's another member of the Russell Horn Hudson clan, former son-in-law and lead singer of maths rock band Muse, Matt Bellamy, who was married to Kate Hudson, Goldie's daughter. He remembers an incident when he was a teenager and how he may have been abducted by aliens. He told Radio X how he believed he saw a UFO when he was 16, when he was picking up a girlfriend, driving her in the middle of the woods, and he saw a flashing light. And it was really unusual at that time of night. And he just remembers waking up at home after that. He lost time and he doesn't remember the journey afterwards. He does admit, though, that it may not have been a UFO. It could have just been a helicopter or something. But he wasn't drinking.
And the losing time is a little time slip. Interesting.
Uri Geller told Sky News that he once had a phone call from John Lennon when they both lived in New York together. He said, Lennon at the time was living in the Dakota building where he ended up living when he died. And I lived on 52nd Street. He called me up one day, kind of in a panic, saying, Uri, please come.
Bend some spoons for me.
You've got to meet me. Something has happened to me. And I said, John, it's 3:00 in the morning. He replied, no, you've got to come. So I met him at the hotel and he was white and shaking. And I said, John, what happened? And he put his left hand into his pocket and pulls out this item here. And this is in an interview with Sky News. And he points to an small egg-shaped kind of sculpture that Uri Geller has in his possession. And I said, what is this? He handed it to me and it's really heavy. And obviously the first thing Geller said was, what did you smoke?
Yeah.
But he said that Lennon swore to him this thing actually happened. So he'd been visited. And Geller totally believed him. He said that Lennon had asked him to keep hold of the weird egg and he's still got it to this day.
Well, get it fucking tested, Uri.
He said it's not a rock. Nobody knows what it's made out of. He gets thousands of emails around the world asking me the same question. Uri, why don't you give this to a scientist?
Yes.
And then we'll finally tell you what it's made out of. And I say, no way. You know why? Because I don't want to be disappointed that this is made in China. I want to believe John Lennon's words.
Once you give that thing to science, you don't know what's going to happen to it. They take it away from you. You might never see it again. You don't know whether or not anyone's really testing it. And yes, it could be made in China.
And then they resell them all on Temu. Who knows? But my final story today is from Fran Dresher, an actress from the United States, from The Nanny.
Her. Well, I liked her from Spinal Tap. She was amazing.
Was she in Spinal Tap? I'll have to go back and look.
She was the American agent.
Okay. I'll have to watch that again. So she told the Huffington Post in 2012 that she and her ex-husband, Peter Mark Jacobson, both had similar alien experiences despite not knowing each other at the time. She said, you know, it's funny because Peter and I both saw aliens before we knew each other doing the same thing, driving on the road with our dads. We were both in junior high. A few years later we met and we realized that we had the same experience. I think that somehow we were programmed to meet. We both have this scar. It's the exact same scar in the same spot.
What?
And that is how we were programmed to meet because they were tracking them. That's what she thinks. Her ex-husband, however, is skeptical and he thinks that Fran Drescher's scar comes from an accident like a drill mishap or carrying a hot cup of tea or something. But the actress wants to believe and claims that's what the aliens programmed us to think. But really, that's where the chip is.
You know, I think you can believe, you can be a skeptic. You can twist anything to verify or crush.
Like everything, really, isn't it, in this world, Michelle? If you want to believe something, you can always find the information to back yourself up.
I know, or disprove it.
Yeah, exactly. And it can be very compelling evidence as well.
It can be, but I love that Fran Dresher believes she's been implanted with something and that's how she met her husband. Wonderful stuff. Oh, really great stories. Thanks, Geordie.
Thank you. And thank you for your wonderful recap of the documentary that I will go and watch despite you now telling me everything that happens, because obviously I forgot bits whilst listening, like who were Dan and Rich. But now I know.
Half-breed.
That's frightening. I want to hear it.
That was probably the most frightening and kind of laughable part of the documentary. But it's quick. You can binge it in an afternoon or an evening.
And I will.
You do it.
And that's what I'm going to do right now. So in the meantime, you lot, whatever you do,
wherever you are,
just keep eavesdropping.
Eavesdropping. Eavesdropping. Dropping. Eavesdropping. Dropping. Eavesdropping. Eavesdropping.
Dropping. Dropping.
Eavesdropping.